So, picture this. It's May of 1991, and a 24-year-old guy named Scott Dunn just vanishes from his apartment in Lubbock, Texas. His girlfriend claims he just up and left. But when investigators go inside, they find a bedroom that's been cleaned with a chilling level of detail. They see clear signs of a brutal, violent crime, but there's one huge problem. There's no victim.
And that's the big question, right? It's what stumped investigators for years. I mean, think about it. Without a body, you don't have an official cause of death. You don't even really have proof that a crime was committed at all. In this explainer, we're going to dive into the incredible forensic science that peeled back the layers of a cover-up and brought a killer to justice, all without the single most important piece of evidence. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Our story kicks off in Lubbock, Texas, with a young man named Scott Dunn. By all accounts, he was a fun-loving guy, maybe a bit of a ladies' man, someone who really enjoyed life. But in the spring of '91, that life came to a sudden and very mysterious end. Let's walk through his last 48 hours. On May 13th, Scott's at a party and gets so violently sick he can't even drive home. The next day, his girlfriend, Leisha Hamilton, comes and gets him. He's in really rough shape, so he basically spends the entire day in bed. Then, on the morning of the 15th, Leisha says she gives him some sinus medicine, a glass of water, and heads off to work. When she gets back home, he's gone. And that was it. That was the official story. A simple disappearance. According to Leisha, Scott just vanished into thin air. A couple of his friends even tried to pick him up later that day, but nobody answered the door. He was never seen or heard from again. And for a guy like Scott, that kind of radio silence was just completely out of character. So after Scott's dad files a missing persons report, the police head over to the apartment Scott shared with Leisha. And what they found there, well, it told a completely different story. A story of violence, of desperation, and a really, really clumsy cover-up. At first glance, the apartment just looked normal. But it was actually Leisha herself who pointed out something weird. A piece of carpet was missing from the living room. That one odd detail was all it took to lead investigators into the bedroom, where the real mystery started to unravel. Okay, now get this. In the bedroom, police find that missing piece of carpet. It had been used to patch a big square that had been literally cut out of the bedroom floor, and this patch was crudely duct-taped into place. Along the edges of the tape, investigators could see these unmistakable rust-colored stains that had soaked all the way through the padding to the concrete below. To a trained eye, it screamed one thing: blood. And this is where the science really takes over. See, even when someone scrubs a crime scene clean, tiny microscopic traces of blood can be left behind. To find them, investigators use a chemical called luminol. As you can see here, you spray it in a dark room and it reacts with the iron in hemoglobin, creating this ghostly blue glow that shows you exactly where blood was spilled. So they sprayed the bedroom, and the room just lit up. It was unreal. The luminol revealed blood spatter on the walls, on the ceiling, and a huge pool on the floor where someone had obviously tried and failed to clean up a massive amount of blood. This wasn't a missing person case anymore. This was a homicide. The only question left was, who did it? So now they have a clear crime scene, but still no body, no weapon. Investigators had to zoom in on the tiniest details to connect a suspect to that room. And their biggest break was about to come from the most ordinary object you can imagine: a simple roll of duct tape. Right away, the police had their eyes on two people. First, of course, was Leisha Hamilton, and she had a powerful motive. She'd just found out that while Scott was living with her, he was secretly engaged to another woman. The second suspect was their neighbor, Tim Smith. People said he was completely smitten with Leisha, and, what a coincidence, he was a no-show at work on the very day Scott disappeared. So the cops decide to pay Tim Smith a little visit. They find him in the middle of packing his stuff, getting ready to move out. While they're talking to him, an officer spots a roll of duct tape on a bookshelf. A moment later, it's gone. After a quick search, they find it hidden behind some books. As investigator Roy Carper said, finding it was a little bit of luck and a whole lot of sharp police work. And this one roll of tape? This is where the whole case just blows wide open. It's brilliant forensics. First, they use infrared light to analyze the tape's chemical makeup: the adhesive, the backing, the fibers. It's a perfect match to the tape from the crime scene. Second, stuck to the sticky sides of the roll, they find these little green carpet fibers, identical to the carpet in Scott's bedroom. And the last piece, the one that ties it all together, they find hairs from both Leisha Hamilton and Tim Smith on the tape from the crime scene, proving they were both there, together, when that patch was put down. The forensic evidence was just unbelievably strong. I mean, it put both suspects right there at the scene of a violent cover-up. But even with all that, the prosecutors hesitated. They were up against one of the biggest challenges in all of criminal law. There's this legal principle called corpus delicti. It literally means the body of the crime. In pretty much any other murder case, the victim's body is the proof that a death actually happened. But here, investigators had nothing. The district attorney just wasn't willing to risk going to trial, and for a full year, the case went completely cold. But Scott's father, Jim, was not giving up. He reached out to this incredible group called the Vidocq Society. They're basically the A-team of international forensic experts, all volunteers who get together to crack the toughest, most impossible cold cases. And this was the turning point. And this, right here, is the moment of genius they needed. One of the society's co-founders, a guy named Richard Walter, he reviewed all the evidence and went back to the DA with this amazing legal argument. He basically said, "You do have a body part. Blood is connective tissue. Therefore, you have the body of the crime right there on the floor." It was brilliant, and it worked. The DA agreed to prosecute. So to prove the attack was fatal, prosecutors brought in a blood spatter expert. By analyzing what are called cast-off patterns on the walls, that's the blood that gets flung from a weapon as it's swung, the expert figured out that Scott Dunn was hit at least 4 times with a blunt object. 1 blow to start the bleeding, and at least 3 more after that. But how much blood was actually lost? To figure that out, an expert ran a saturation test. They poured blood onto a sample of the exact same carpet until it made a stain the same size as the one at the crime scene. And as you can see on this chart, it took nearly 2 full units of blood. For perspective, the average man has about 10. Losing that much blood that quickly, there's just no way you survive an attack like that. So 5.5 years after Scott Dunn disappeared, Leisha Hamilton and Tim Smith were finally arrested and tried for murder. And both of them were found guilty. Leisha, who was seen as the mastermind acting out of revenge, got 20 years in prison. Tim Smith, who the jury probably thought was more involved in the cover-up than the actual murder, received 10 years probation. In the end, science solved the crime, but it couldn't provide the one thing the family needed most. The case was closed, but for Scott's father, there was no real closure. Scott Dunn's body has never been found, which means his family has a conviction, but they don't have a grave to visit. And it leaves us with this final, haunting question. Can justice ever really feel complete when a victim is never laid to rest?